We have a lot of clients coming to us, a problem around implementing sustainability on their projects. Most clients have this corporate ESG strategy developed by one of the big four, but translating that corporate strategy into project delivery is the big challenge. And that's why people come to us. That's our skill set in Cosmos. There's only two real measurable pieces around sustainability. One is carbon. It's the only metric we should be measuring and baselining against. And carbon is a currency just like cost. It's a currency in CO2. But the principles of measuring carbon are the same as measuring cost. You need quantities. You need to quantify building components and apply that currency piece to them to understand the total value of your carbon impact within that building. And so we can look at whole life carbon across the entire project lifecycle, which is necessary because projects are changing now from that capital investment piece, that design and build, and it doesn't matter what happens after that, into a whole life piece of a 50, 60-year strategy for each building. And what people haven't realized is that it's not just new buildings we need to do this on. We need to do this on all historical current assets that are currently built, because we need to understand what the carbon impact of the entire built environment globally is. And so let's not get too big too soon. Let's look at existing new builds, perhaps buildings that are in the pipeline. Let's understand from your organizational piece what the baseline carbon impact is, and only from there can you measure. That's one measurement of sustainability, the carbon piece. A lot of people at the moment are going for green certifications like LEED and BREEAM and DGNB, but the current cohort of green certifications aren't really sustainability. They're a badge, and actually in a couple of years when we look back, we'll look at them as greenwashing, because they don't go far enough in terms of sustainability. They're changing. We have a version 5 LEED coming out in a number of months, or it's already out when this video will be released. And LEED version 5 is focusing heavily on carbon, because carbon is the only measurable metric when we can say we're improving or we're getting worse when it comes to sustainability. So back to our clients, they come looking for assistance on carbon. And carbon is not about material selection. Carbon is about procurement. You need to be able to procure your carbon solutions from every stakeholder you bring on the team. So what do I mean by that? Architects, engineer, you need to procure a carbon process from them. How are they going to manage the carbon piece for you? Your quantity surveying practice, you need to be able to procure carbon from your QSs so that they can manage it, report on it. They can build documentation for further tenders on it to the rest of the stakeholder groups. You need to be able to procure carbon from your contractor. They need to be able to procure carbon from their supply chain so that you as a client can get that information so that you can report on your carbon up through your ESG and EU taxonomy. And what's happening right now in the industry is people are breaking off sustainability as a new discipline function. And in reality, that's not correct. Every current discipline in place needs to be sustainability literate, because they have a delivery, whether you're the electrical engineer, the mechanical engineer, the structural engineer, the architect, the landscape architect, the contractor, the quantity surveyor. You need to understand how you should advise your client on sustainability and how you are influencing the sustainability journey in the exact same way you influence cost, in the exact same way you influence risk and change management. Sustainability is not a separate function in reality, especially at project level. At corporate level maybe, but not at project level in our opinion. So quantity surveyors should be the disciplines that are managing carbon, because carbon is procurement, carbon is reporting, carbon is monitoring, carbon is estimating, carbon is strategy. Carbon is not material selection. That's the first real key point we need to get across. So in reality, why we say the quantity surveyors are best suited is because quantity surveyors survey quantities. They're also cost experts, they're procurement experts, they're risk experts, they're tendering and contract experts. So having those on board that have that specialization will become key to success around carbon, which is why, Cosmos are one of the leading consultants when it comes to digital cost and carbon. And we talked about carbon as a currency, cost as a currency. They go hand in hand. You need to know the cost impact of carbon and the carbon impact of cost side by side so you can make decisions. But you can't do that in a traditional manual manner. We need to get the digital component in there. So that trifecta of digital cost and carbon becomes key to real-time, upfront information in order to influence decision making so that you as a client are making the right decision at the right time and not retrospectively looking back. So if today on your projects, your quantity surveyors are manually measuring on-screen 2D measurement or paper-based 2D measurement, and they're not integrated in the 3D process, you're going to have a challenge down the road when you need real-time carbon information to make decisions from a sustainability perspective, because it's going to affect your green financing. And so as our financial institutions change from traditional financing to green financing, you will now need to report on carbon across the project lifecycle and making sure that you hit your targets at the end. Because if you don't hit your green targets at the end, you don't get your green financing. So in order to do that, you need to have the digital piece, you need to have the cost piece, and you need to have the carbon piece, the Cosmos trifecta, digital cost and carbon. So I'd urge you to reach out to us to have this conversation. We not only are cost managers, but we're also digital consultants. We're also sustainability and carbon consultants.